like sometimes there's a lot of suffering involved, like not in a bad way, but it's painful to be out there for that long, whether it's running or cycling or triathlon or CrossFit or whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
Whenever you're pushing yourself, it doesn't always feel really nice. But I think that's the most important part is whenever it doesn't feel good, how are you going to interpret that and how are you going to take that into your daily life?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Lionheart Radio. We are currently in the beginning stages of summer, and it doesn't matter if you are a gym rat or a weekend warrior or an endurance athlete or some combination of all of them, kind of like myself. Everybody has one thing on their mind, and that is looking good naked. Everybody wants to look good and have some payoff for all of the hard work that they're doing behind the scenes. Everybody at Lionheart Radio is no different, from the host to the people that we have working behind the scenes. Now, if there is one thing that separates us apart, it's essentially the fact that we are not willing to sell you any bullshit. So what we've done is we've taken out the whole crash diet. We've saved you the 6 weeks to the next six-pack plan. And we've taken all of the knowledge that we have, collectively pooled it together, and put it in a document, a book, that you can download for free on lionheartrad.io. In that book, we have things that are going to help you get sustainably lean. We've got which workouts will help you burn more fat. We have tips on how to keep track of your daily calories and nutrition. And we've even got a glossary in the back with a list of movements and how you can plug them into your programming when you are looking for a desired result. Now, just like the show, everything is free. Go to lionheartrad.io and download your free ebook. As always, thank you for taking this journey with us. We will see you in the gym or at the beach. All right, well, welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv in San Diego, California. And today I am joined by plant-based world champion ultra-endurance mountain biker. She is a prolific entrepreneur. She's given a TED Talk, and she is also the host of the Sonya Looney Show. So, Sonya, thank you for being on today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to meet you and all your audience.
Yeah, so I want to start with how you even got started with ultra-endurance mountain biking, because it seems like such a niche sport. I'm curious how that road even got you there, or what road got you there.
But before I was a cyclist, I was a runner, and I ran my first marathon at 18, and I was just interested in ultra endurance or I guess marathons aren't really ultra endurance, but from the beginning of my career as an endurance athlete, I just always wanted to go big and do something that was going to be really hard that I wasn't sure what the outcome would be. But when I started cycling, I started in cross-country mountain biking, which is around the 15 to 20 mile range. And normally a cross-country race is an hour and a half to 2 hours. And for a beginner, that's a long time to be on a bike. But I kind of got tired of that style of racing. It's fun because it's really intense, but you typically go around in circles on the same course and you don't get to see a lot. So I really wanted to have bigger adventures and ride more trail and spend more time on my bike. And when I found out they had 100-mile mountain bike racing, I thought, that's awesome. I want to give that a try. And the experience of that's really different from cross country. Cross country is more like you're racing other people, whereas with ultra endurance mountain biking, it's more about you versus yourself and the whole mental aspect behind racing.
So where were you racing cross country mountain biking at?
Primarily when I got started in New Mexico and Colorado.
Okay. I grew up racing until I was like 17 around New England. So I was
Oh, cool.
So,
I still would like to spend some more time out there. I actually haven't really been to I've been to like New York, but I don't know if that counts as New England even.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't. Because I hate New York, and everybody from New England hates New York.
All right, good.
Especially the Yankees. Yeah, no, the racing around New England's really good. So like Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, like that, there's like really good racing up there.
I heard there's really good mountain biking out there, like technical riding, and I'd actually really like to go there to do some riding.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the East Coast, it's definitely the way to go. What makes a mountain bike race ultra? So with a marathon, obviously, ultra marathon is anything longer than a marathon. What's ultra endurance racing for mountain biking? And then how long are these races that you're typically doing?
I'd say anything longer than 50 miles. Like a 50-mile race, you can kind of fake it. You don't have to have real endurance to perform in a 50-mile race. Kind of like, I would say, a running marathon. You can kind of fake it. But typically, they're anywhere from 5 to 24 hours to days long. I mean, there's some self-supported bike packing races where you they say start and then you have 500,000 miles to cover, and it's up to you how much you want to sleep.
Hmm. Is that most of the races that you do, or are they usually
Typically, I
supported?
typically I do 100-mile mountain bike races, which are between 7 to 9 hours. I've done 24-hour racing, which means you race your bike for 24 hours straight, but it starts at like noon and then it ends on noon the next day. But primarily what my focus on is on multi-day races. So it's called stage racing, and it has a set start and finish every single day. So typically a stage race will be anywhere from 20 to 35 hours of racing over 7 days, usually around 500 miles. Some stage races can be 5 days, some can be 10, but typically it's a multi-day format, and you cross up, it's usually point to point, and you cross a region across like a country or a state or just a forest, and it's a pretty cool way to see a region, and culturally it's a really great way to meet people around the world that have similar interests, and you get to spend almost a week with them, so you really get to know people on a really different level than you would if it was a one-day race.
Yeah, I love ultra communities. Well, the only thing I know is ultra marathon running, but I love the communities. I think because everybody knows what it's like to suffer out there, so even the people working the aid stations are like, it's just such a tight-knit thing, and you might not know them, but it still feels tight-knit.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm actually really interested in ultra running, but I've gone so far in my cycling career as a pro mountain biker that to take up ultra running in addition to mountain biking would be really bad for my career as a mountain biker. So when I retire from mountain biking, I actually plan to do more ultra running, and there's a bunch of events that I'm really interested in.
Oh, nice. So this might come off as a little forward, but is there a lot of money in mountain biking?
No, there is not. Like most races don't have any prize money, and some of them have. If there's any prize money, it's not very much. So if you're going to be a real, I don't know, a pro mountain biker means that you went through a certain series of races and you had to win at a certain level in order to be recognized as a pro and get like a license that's recognized internationally um, by a racing organization and governing body of cycling. So that doesn't necessarily, like, people think that being a pro mountain biker means that everybody like doesn't work and all you have to do is ride your bike and you get paid all this money, which it's quite the opposite. It's kind of like running. But how I survive. So my background is I have my master's degree in electrical engineering, and then I ended up switching careers and doing marketing in the bike industry. And then from there, I quit my job and I manage all my own sponsorships, and I've built an entire branding business around what I'm doing with speaking and writing and podcasting, and more recently products, and also building. You basically become like a media distribution company, but also with a really succinct mission statement, because each person's different. And for me, my mission statement is I like to push myself and I like to try things around the world, and by doing that you really find out who you are and what you're made of. And by setting an example and just being friendly and being brave enough to do things that maybe you thought you couldn't do, you realize you're more capable than you ever thought that you could be. So my goal is to get people to, they don't have to take on the world's hardest mountain bike races, but just to try little things outside their comfort zone that they wish that they could do, so that they don't spend their days thinking, oh, I wish I could do that. They spend their time attempting to do that. And I love just talking about how you do that. Like how do you leave the fear of failure behind? Because a lot of the time we don't start something or we don't try something because we're afraid people will tell us no, or they'll tell us, oh, you're not good enough. And it's a really difficult place to be because you're very vulnerable.
Yeah, I think I can't highlight the importance of having a personal mission statement enough, because I think when you do, and you are open, like you, especially if you're someone like me that's like very ADD and you have all of these shiny objects and you always want to start new projects and do things, when you have a personal mission statement, it helps you evaluate the projects and the things that are coming into your life and whether they're worth your time or going to align with like what you want your life to be about, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that everybody's is different, but I think that whenever you help other people, and it's not just about, oh, everybody, I want to build my Instagram following so I feel like I'm famous. It's more, are you being of service to other people, and are you leaving the world a better place than when you entered it?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of our audience are CrossFitters and we have like powerlifters and all kinds of different people. I think we have a lot of CrossFitters because mainly those people tend to be open to learning about new disciplines because they have to be.
Mm-hmm.
So with that and with Instagram growing, everybody wants to figure out a way to make a living doing what they love. And a lot of these sports, CrossFit is one of them, the very like top people make a lot of money, but then everybody else in the sport is kind of just trying to figure it out. And I think there's a lot of niche sports that are that way. And so I'm curious about what advice you might have for people that do want to build a brand and make a living, doing what they love.
Yeah, like it depends on kind of the direction you're going. So if you want to work with other brands out there that have products that you want to promote, it's about not saying, hey, can I have free stuff? It's, hey, how can I bring value to your business? How can I be somebody that is credible where people are going to look up to me and want my input on whatever products I might be using? And being authentic in that is really important because there's lots of times people come to me and they'll offer me money to promote something, but I don't actually like it or believe in it. And the second you start taking money in exchange for a product that you don't actually use, that's really dangerous because you're going to lose all of your credibility. So in terms of product, it's how can you be a media, marketing, and sales agent to the brand, but do it in an authentic manner that fits you, where you're not trying to be somebody else. So it sounds simple, but it's not, and it takes a lot of practice to figure that out. Number two, like last year I was really focused on social media, but there's a lot of other outlets. Like, for example, something I want to start focusing more on is my YouTube channel, and I've been trying to put more content out there because YouTube is the second most visited website on the internet aside from Google. So it's not Facebook or Instagram that's the second most visited site. It's YouTube because people are on there, like they're not watching TV anymore. They're going to YouTube. And they're also on there looking for advice and how to do things. So say you're a CrossFitter, and I've only done CrossFit once, so forgive me if I don't use the right terminology, but like a clean or like something like that, one of the moves you do. Maybe you can do a video on how to do that properly, or you could do vlogging about what it's like to be a CrossFitter and not in look how badass I am. I'm a CrossFitter. I'm strong. I can do all these things. It's maybe you look at it from, this is the hard part about being a CrossFitter. This is where I feel like really get into how you feel. And I think that that's a really great way to connect with people because everybody is dying to connect. And there's kind of two sides of media and out there on the internet. And part of it is like, oh, look how good I am. Look at all my muscles. Look at this rose colored lens of how I look. And that is part of life. But the other part is the real part of it. So how can you be more real online too? And I think that that's another way to connect with people. And thereby, if you're bringing value to them and you're bringing value to companies, then and you study the business of how to be an influencer, then I think that there's a lot of potential for you. But you can't give up. It's really hard. And lots of people tell you no, even whenever you think they should be telling you yes. And you just have to keep going and understand that if a brand or a person doesn't want to work with you, that doesn't mean that you're a failure or that you're bad. It just means that it's not the right fit.
Sure. And so maybe you answered it right there with the connection piece, but how have you, because it seems like maybe if I were to ask 1,000 marketers, right, 900 of them would tell me like a lot of the advice that you just told me, yet it is a very crowded space. So how have you like really risen above that noise and kind of gotten above? Because I think you've been exceptional, especially within the mountain bike space, of getting above that noise.
I think it's just because of how I started. I started a blog in 2006, 2007, and I would just write about my adventures. And I've always just been really honest about, like, without complaining, but really honest about how things are going. And I travel a lot, so it's not just online that I'm trying to connect with people. Like when I'm in public, like I'm very much like I am online. I love people. I love talking to people. And I think that building community is more about just building online community. So how can you build community out in person in the world? And that really makes an impact as well. So you have to do both. And I think that that's a way where you can stand out is you're real and you're an actual real person that people can talk to, and responding to every comment and email and just being a resource and looking at it from a place of I'm here to help, not I'm here to show you how good I am.
So this might be a too deep of a question for 10 minutes into an interview, but when people find you on social media and they find you on YouTube or your blog or the various entrepreneurial and new media outlets that you have, what do you want people to take away from you? Like, what do you want people to go away from and think about when they think about Sonya Looney?
I want them to see what I'm doing and think, wow, like she's doing it, I can do that too. I really believe in the I can do this too culture instead of being unobtainium and just being like a pedestal where people look up to you. I want to be somebody where people can say, I want to ride my bike like that. Sonya's doing it. I'll ask her how and she'll help me and I'll do that. Or, oh, Sonya's going to Colombia to do this race. Like, what is that going to be like? Is she scared? And she'll tell me about it. I know she will. And what's that experience going to be like? So I can go along with her along the way. And then maybe one day I want to do that. And then she can tell me what I need to do in order to do that. So basically, like, I want to help people do the things that they've wanted to do, have adventures, challenge themselves, take risks, find that I want to help them be their best version of themselves. And that, I think, is what you'll find if you look on my social media channels, is me trying to be the best version of myself and having adventures and taking you along the journey with me, but also being there as a resource to say, hey, like, you want to learn how to ride like this, or how do you pack for going to Africa? Like, here's all these things if you want to learn how to do them. And I want to empower people to do those things.
Very cool. Do you think that most people, general population, could do what you're doing? Maybe not be a world champion, but do like an ultra marathon or an ultra event?
I definitely do. I think that it takes commitment and hard work, but I really believe that anybody can do what I'm doing. You have to be comfortable with the amount of, like, sometimes there's a lot of suffering involved, like, not in a bad way, but it's painful to be out there for that long, whether it's running or cycling or triathlon or CrossFit or whatever you're doing. Whenever you're pushing yourself, it doesn't always feel really nice. But I think that's the most important part, is whenever it doesn't feel good, how are you going to interpret that? And how are you going to take that into your daily life?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So a lot of times that, like, when people ask me about running the ultras and stuff, that's always my thing. I'm like, well, no, you should actually just go do it. Like, you would be completely surprised at what you were capable of if you just decide to keep moving forward. And from starting this show, I think something I've noticed is, from meeting a lot of people like yourself, a lot of thought leaders and world champions, like, these are people that literally just went out there and moved forward. Like, they literally just decided to do it. And, you know, it wasn't easy by any means, and it's not to, like, play that down, but a lot of people don't realize that, like, most of what you might want to do in life, or what you see other people doing, is, like, it's actually just because they made that decision to do it, and you just haven't made that decision because it seems unattainable or whatever.
Yeah, I did this. It was like a campfire chat at this REI thing a few days ago.
On your story, yeah.
Yeah, and the whole premise of my talk was get started, because with mountain biking, like, I didn't grow up riding a mountain bike. I didn't even know that cycling or mountain biking was even a sport. It's just one day I decided to try it, and it changed the entire trajectory of my life. Like, I would be in a very different place in my life right now had I not decided, oh, I'll just give that a try. And I'm sure that people who have found success doing other things, it doesn't have to be mountain biking. Like, you decided that you're going to go off in this direction and try, and then it turns out to be this amazing thing, and it changes your life. So instead of wishing that you could try it, just give it a try and see what happens, because you never know what could happen.
Yeah, for sure. What was that chat? Was it you were just giving a talk and it was by like a fireplace?
It was like REI does this thing where they take some of their store managers and employees, and they get to work with the brands. And so one of my sponsors was one of those brands. So basically there was, like, I don't know, 50 or 100 people, and they just wanted me to give an hour talk by the fire while people, like, hung out and had beer. And so it was cool. Like, I loved that. Like, again, it comes down to community and human connection and sharing your story in a real way and being available for people and showing up for people. So that I feel most alive when I'm speaking in front of a crowd, because I love connecting with them. And I know that I'm not for everybody, right? Like, not everybody is going to love what I'm doing or what I'm talking about, but the people that do, those are my people. And I know that there's going to be an impact made, and there's a ripple effect beyond that. Like, if you can touch somebody's life, they're going to go touch other people's lives, and it really makes the world a better place.
Yeah, I completely agree. So you do a lot of talking in front of people. You've done a TED Talk and stuff like that. I'm curious, I think that there's a lot of parallels that you can draw between sport and regular life. I think I've noticed it even more so with the endurance stuff. What have you learned through this lifestyle that you've taken on for yourself that's like the most relatable to everybody else? And I'm mostly asking that just because for the people that are listening to this, like what are the most like relatable kind of lessons you've learned from your experiences?
There's a couple that come to my mind when you ask the question. Number one is in sports, things aren't always going to go the way that you wanted them to go. In fact, most of the time they're not. So it teaches you to be flexible and to do things based on the effort and the joy of doing them, not on the outcome that you want to achieve, because you can't always control what the outcome is going to be, but you can control how you're going to approach it and the journey, so to speak. That's really important. Number two, I would say along the lines of how I just started cycling, or how I said, okay, now I'm going to do 100 milers. And last year I actually started doing some enduro / downhill type mountain biking, is just do it. And how that I've done that in my life is I said one day, okay, I want to be a speaker. So I just put like a speaker tab on my website. I didn't have any formal training in speaking, and all these people wanted to hire me to be a speaker. And so boom, I was a speaker. Or like with marketing, I was working as a solar engineer, and a company wanted me to come be their national sales and marketing manager. No training at all, no background, but they asked me to do it. And instead of saying, well, like, I'm not really qualified or whatever, I said yes. And I said, I'll figure it out as I go. So believing that you're adaptable and that you have the confidence to attempt something, and that you're up for the challenge. I've learned that from sport, but it's also really helped me in my life, especially as like an entrepreneur. The first one that you mentioned, being focused on the outcome, your latest episode of the Sonya Looney show, you talked about the Transylvania Epic, and I think that was like kind of like the theme of the whole show. Do you want to kind of give people like maybe a Cliff Notes version of what transpired and like how that changed your mind? Yeah, so basically this event, and I'll start it by preface it by saying that it's always better when it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to go, because there's always a better story when you say, oh yeah, and then I won. It's like not that exciting for people. But for this race, it's a 5-day mountain bike race in Pennsylvania. And I really wanted to go and do well, because 4 years ago I went and I was just massively underprepared in terms of equipment and ability. So this year I was really excited to go. And basically everything went wrong. Like it took me 30 hours to get there because of all these like bad travel things that happen. And that's normally okay. But then the next day I was cooking something. I was making this like sauce, and had butternut squash and sweet potato, and you're supposed to put it in a blender to smooth out the sauce. And I wasn't using my Vitamix. I was using what was at the Airbnb, and it exploded all over me. And I got 2nd-degree burns all over my body that are still like very visible. And people are actually like, what's wrong with your wrist or your neck or whatever? So I had all these like 2nd-degree burns all over my body. And the next day I had to start this race. So I had to put all of that behind me. And that was really hard because I just wanted to go home and I just wanted to give up. Yeah, done. And I was there by myself. I didn't even have any support from anybody, other than like calling people. So I just had to put that behind me and get started. And then the race actually was going really well. Like I was winning the race, and it was a very competitive, really fun race. Like all of us were very close every single day. And day 4 out of 5, I had a bad crash on day 1 to top it off, and I had like busted up my knee and had bruises and all these things. And I had also kind of slightly damaged my bike a little bit. And on day 4, the bike actually kind of broke all the way, so I couldn't ride it. So that meant that I was going to lose the race, and it might mean that I wasn't even going to finish the race. So instead of quitting, which would be really easy to do, I walked until I found a spectator, which was probably 15, 20 minutes, and I asked them if they had a bike I could borrow. And it was like a crappy bike with like reflectors and flat pedals. What? That they probably thought it was like an awesome bike, but it's all relative, Right. Yeah, it had like reflectors and the whole 9 yards. So I just dropped off my bike and said, I'll be back. I still have 7 miles to go. And I took their bike and I finished the day. And I knew I was going to be getting a time penalty for accepting outside support. So I got a 60-minute time penalty. There was no way that I was going to even be close to winning the race or being on the podium. But to me, it wasn't about winning. Like initially, there's certain races where I get really focused on winning because I like winning races. That's why I race. But I had to change my mindset to focusing on the process and not the result. And this was a great example of I felt awesome. I felt so happy when I was done with the race. I wasn't, I didn't play, I didn't feel like a victim. Like, poor me, all these bad things happened. It was, wow, all those bad things happened, but I just kept going and I still had an awesome time. And it's the lens that you choose to view what you're doing through. And if you choose to say, oh, that sucked, my bike broke, I had burns, and make every excuse in the book and then quit, or like, oh, like this happened, okay, well, I'm just going to keep going, or this happened, well, I'm here because I love riding trails, I love meeting people, like go back to the reason that I love racing. I don't love racing just because of winning. I love racing because I love riding my bike. So even coming in 10th place when I should have won the race was still really fun for me. And being able to detach my ego from the result is, I think, a really important thing to be able to do. And that's something that we're actually taught really young, like extrinsic rewards for our efforts. And I'm actually excited. I have a really cool guest coming on my podcast in a couple of weeks to speak about that exact thing, like intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic rewards based on what you're doing. So that's my long-winded answer.
I think the 60-minute penalty is definitely worth the story, first of all. Did you meet that person late? I'm just trying to figure out what happened here. Did you meet that person later and trade your bike back?
Yeah, so I finished the race and then I put the bike in my car and I drove back to where I had dropped my bike, and I had asked this person, like, okay, tell me where you are so I can come right back. You have my bike, and my bike has lots of expensive parts on it, so I think it was really good collateral.
Right.
But yeah, she was just like a local that lived near there, and she was just taking pictures of the race for fun. And she was, yeah, I mean, she saved my day. She saved the day for me. She was my hero that day. And without her, I would not have been able to finish. Like, I actually might have finished, but I might have had to like walk or run my bike for 7 miles. And I have had to do that in the past.
Yeah.
If you guys watch my TED Talk, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but you should definitely watch my TED Talk if you want to hear the story of how I went over the Himalaya mountains and went over the longest mountain pass in the world.
Yeah, we will link that up in the show notes for sure. Were you wearing your clipless pedals, shoes on these pedals and just slipping all over the place? Yeah, it was
so sketchy because it's metal on metal, and then there was some of it was road, but some of it was like wet, slippery roots and trail, and it was definitely sketchy. And then I had gotten off my bike because there was somebody coming, and I didn't want to be in his way because I knew how sketchy I was on that bike. And the guy was like, "Why are you walking? Get back on your bike." And I said, "Well, like." My bike broke and now I'm on this other bike, and he's like, that's an excuse. I was just like, whoa, this guy is like out of control.
Yeah, all right, guy. Yeah, because for people listening, like if you have clipless pedals on a mountain bike, the bottoms are typically hard, so they're like hard plastic or hard metal. So to try to pedal on regular shoes, like that's what I was getting at, you'd be slipping all over the place.
Yeah, it's like metal on metal and just like really slippery.
Yeah, for sure. So where does your mind go when you're competing for hours on end?
It really depends. There are races where my mind just kind of wanders and I just absent-mindedly start thinking, but a lot of times I just try and focus on what I'm doing in that moment. It's really hard to always be present, but I try and think about where I am, how I feel, what I'm doing, what my surroundings are. Am I going too hard? Am I hungry? I try not to start letting my mind daydream because then you lose focus. But time just goes by really quickly. Like when you're riding your bike for 24 hours straight, it sounds like a really long time, but the way that you process time, even for like 8 hours, it just kind of changes. And you just kind of are going along, like just taking in all these inputs while you're going and focusing on doing your best.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's always interesting to see like everybody has their own perspective on that. But I do think I agree with you. I think that time does go by a lot faster. Like no matter what, you'll be focusing on something, and then the next thing you know, like hours have passed in that same time. So how do you train for these? So you mentioned running, and you mentioned running like when you were getting into the sport. Do you cross train at all, or do you just like strictly mountain bike race?
I pretty much strictly mountain bike race. Like I do a little bit of running in the off season, but it really depends because like my race season is about 9 months long at like every year because I enjoy that.
Geez, okay.
Well, yeah, no, I live in Canada and the winter is really rough here. So I try to go somewhere in the southern hemisphere in the winter to do a race, and it keeps me motivated to keep training in the winter time. But yeah, I primarily just mountain bike. I do yoga for sure, and I do some kind of body weight type exercises because the thing that I love about mountain biking is it's not just about pedaling your bike uphill. There's a technical aspect and a full body strength aspect. So you need to have a strong core, shoulders, pecs, back, like everything is going to be needs to be strong, especially if you're riding your bike on uneven terrain for many hours. But I still love running. I want to get into some skiing, but I don't know. I just always go back to the bike because that's what I love to do. It's like those are all secondary activities.
Sure. Do you think though that those secondary activities do or could make you like more efficient on the bike or make you stronger on the bike?
I think that they make you stronger mentally on the bike because if you're burnt out, like if I get burnt out, I do take time off the bike. If you're just forcing yourself to go through the motions, you lose the passion for it. And whenever you're unhappy doing something, you're not going to be nearly as successful. So take a break if you need a break. But there's also other sports. Like I would say cross country skiing would really help my mountain biking because it does also strengthen your entire body in a different range of motion than on the mountain bike. And that's also why I go to yoga. And cross country skiing also is a very respiratory aerobic exercise. And that could really help the aerobic part of mountain biking too.
Yeah, definitely. I think the fact that your season is 9 months long is actually really relatable to people, not because they might all be competing for 9 months, but also because most people in life aren't trying to peak for the Olympics, right? They just want to stay in really good shape all year round. And I'm curious, like for you, what kind of maybe training methodologies do you do in between these races to kind of stay peaked necessarily, like specifically all year round? Because you don't have that one race that you can train up to and then deload from. You kind of just have to be ready all year. So how do you train for that?
Yeah, so there's certain times of year where I know I'm not going to be performing optimally, and that's typically in the winter because you can't ride outside. So I do all my training on the indoor trainer. So aerobically, like my high end will be really fit because you'll be doing a lot of intensity on a trainer, but you can't do like 4 or 5. Well, you could, but it's no fun to do like 4 or 5 hour rides indoors. So just knowing that there's going to be times of the year where you're going to be better and more fit than other times of the year, and just being okay with that. And just remembering about your process. And so there are races where like I do say, okay, like my next big race is a 7-day race in Colombia. And everything I'm doing now is leading up to that. So I'm doing races, but they're basically training races where I'm doing 15, 20 hours of training during the week. And the race is part of that. So I know that those races, I'm not showing up with my A game. I'm showing up kind of like fatigued, but knowing that this is part of a bigger goal.
Sure.
So I do think that you need to have, if you're like kind of always kind of training, but you have some goals, is like prioritize those goals. And again, make sure you're not burning out, because again, burning out is the worst possible thing you can do for your sport because you're doing it because you love it. But if you stop loving it, then it's just, that's not good for anybody.
Right. You ever get a fat tire bike and just hit it on the snow?
I do. I enjoy that. It's not very good training for like racing because we don't have groomed trails. So typically what happens is you walk your bike uphill and then you kind of ride down. Or you're trying to keep the bike upright, which is actually very good for stabilizer muscles because you're just trying to it's really slow and you're constantly moving side to side just with micro movement. So that's good too.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I've always been curious and want to try one of those things. There's like people here that do them on the beach a lot.
Yeah, they're really fun. I also think that if you're trying to get into mountain biking, a fat tire mountain bike is great because it gives you a large margin of error and you feel really stable on dirt because the tire is so big. So if you're interested in just seeing what mountain biking's like take one of those bikes out. A lot of shops rent them out, and then you can say, okay, like I kind of like this. Maybe I want to try like a real mountain bike.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk diet a little bit. I know that being vegan is super important to you because you lead with it in all of your your intros on your shows. Is it a health thing? Is it an ethical thing? I just want to kind of get in the mindset of why and kind of how you got to this point.
Yeah, it's a health thing. And the funny thing is I didn't tell anybody that I ate a plant-based diet until recently. Like I did it for 3.5 years. And then finally I decided, okay, well, maybe I'll tell people what I eat because I do attribute it to a lot of positive things in my life. But I don't really like the term vegan. I don't really like the idea of a community that shuns people if they're not perfect, or like I don't have anything against people that eat meat, for example.
Sure.
So I don't want to create a divisive thing in my life where people are going to feel judged or afraid or any of those things. So but to me it's important because I watched a documentary, and there's a lot of other ones on Netflix now, but it was about 4 years ago, called Forks Over Knives. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was a vegan, and when I met him I was like, oh god, not another vegan, because I lived in Boulder, Colorado, and the vegans were that I had known were like very self-righteous, and I
Sure.
just didn't want to have anything to do with that. But he's like, okay, well, and he wasn't like that at all, but he just said, well, this is why I eat this way. It's for health. So if you're interested, here's your resources. It's up to you if you want to do your own research on that. So that was a really nice way to say, this is why I do what I do. So I watched these documentaries, and then I learned that diet contributes to the top 15 diseases. It's a contributor to the top 15 diseases that kill human beings. And a great book, if you want to check it out, is How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. And it's about all of the peer reviewed research out there showing how you can prevent and reverse heart disease with diet, and cancer, and high blood pressure, and Alzheimer's. Like all of these diseases had a really common link to one of the ways to get better and prevent it, and that is with your diet. So that was really just crazy to me whenever I started seeing all of this research. And I think it's important to do the research, to read the research yourself. Like when you just read in like, I don't know, Women's Health or like whatever magazine that you're reading, the media kind of like can make a story look however they want it to look. So it's up to the individual to take the responsibility to go and check it out for yourself and make the decision for yourself based on what you have read. So for me, it's like I spend at least an hour a day studying nutrition because I'm an ultra endurance athlete. I want to be in peak form. I want to be as healthy as possible. And now that I've told people about how I eat, I have more energy. I recover faster. My blood pressure is really low. Like there's this program called Inside Tracker where everyone should try it. They like take your blood and they check out all these different biomarkers, and then they like if you don't want to eat a plant-based diet, if you eat like meat or whatever, they just make dietary recommendations on how to be optimized for all these different biomarkers. But this was cool because I did Inside Tracker and I had like just really great results for all my biomarkers, which told me that okay, I'm doing a great job with my nutrition. But when I told everybody how I ate, it was really crazy because I got over 100 emails about it, and people wanted me to help them with their diet. So it's a big responsibility to kind of be a figurehead for a type of lifestyle. So it's important to me that I am up to speed on research and how to eat, and just being, because I'm a resource for people on that.
Okay, I'm going to try to unpack that. Is
Okay, cool.
Inside Tracker, is that a website?
Yeah, it's a website.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So you just go on there and you order, they send it to you, and then you test yourself and send it back or something?
No, you have to go get a blood test done. So they charge like a flat fee, and you just go like in Canada, they had to send a nurse to my house, but in the US, you would just they tell you where to go, and you just go there and they take your blood, and then you get a report back, and then you can go through it with their nutritionist. So
Okay,
it's really cool.
They interpret it all for you.
Yeah, they interpret it for you, and you get this like great report, and then you can kind of change your diet. So the idea of food as medicine, and the whole lifestyle medicine movement, I think is really new in the last 5 years. Like people really didn't start talking about using food to treat our diseases and our ailments, and realizing and connecting the fact that, oh, I have an autoimmune disease. Maybe I can get better with diet. Or, oh, I have, like, people in my family have high blood pressure. Like, what can I do to prevent that?
Sure. Can you eat, now when you say plant-based, can't you can eat meat and still eat a plant-based diet, right? Or maybe I'm not up on the lingo.
I mean, I don't like there's like all these labels, and I don't want to like say, because I'm not going to be the person that says this is the rule, but when I say I eat a plant-based diet, it means I don't eat meat or dairy or eggs. I don't eat any animal product except for honey. But, it's up to you. Like, basically, people will be healthier if they eliminate processed foods,
Sure.
if they eliminate like white sugar, white flour, and if they eat more fruits and vegetables. Like, I think that, like, for me, I started trending in that direction, eating more fruits and vegetables, and eating less meat, less dairy, less eggs, and I felt better and better to the point where I actually don't want to eat any of that stuff because it makes me feel bad. But generally, I think for health, if you just can just move in that direction, even if it's 10% shift, it'll make you feel healthier and you'll feel better.
Yeah. Have you heard the Don't Eat Crap acronym before?
No.
Crap is like carbonated drinks, R is refined sugar. I can't remember what the A is, and then P is like processed or something. I don't know. Same
Yeah.
idea. So,
Yeah, like I don't look at people who eat a paleo diet and say, "Oh, those people like suck," or like they should be eating a vegan diet. Like, there are things about the paleo diet that I think are awesome. Like, again, the lack of processed foods, and if you do look at how Paleolithic man ate, they didn't eat tons of meat because they could only find it very very infrequently. They were mostly hunter gatherers, and the majority of their diet was plants, and they actually ate more fiber than a lot of vegans eat because they had so many fruits and vegetables in their diet.
yeah. Yeah, the bacon is life thing has really gone too far in
Yeah,
that movement.
and the scary thing, and I mean, if you guys are interested, you can look it up yourselves, but there's this 10-year study that comes out every year, every 10 years for it's like the World Anti-Cancer Association, and the World Health Organization is involved with this as well, and they said that processed meats, including bacon, are a class 1 carcinogen, and it's as bad for you as smoking. And I mean, this isn't just like some like cherry picked study. It's like the World Health Organization has put that. You can Google it yourself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's like disappointing because it's like, ooh,
It
like
is.
prosciutto and bacon and all these things that taste amazing and that are really like, championed because people love it and it does taste good. So it's monitoring yourself, right? It's like you don't have to say I'm never eating bacon ever again, but just realizing the implications if you are eating it. Like, same with drinking. Like, drinking alcohol is, in the same study, it's tied to causing a lot of different types of cancer. So it's up to you to regulate how much alcohol you want to drink, but knowing the facts and the research behind it is important.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I am curious, though, about one aspect of the diet because when you do these multi-day events, recovering from day to day has got to be extremely important. So I'm curious, one, like maybe where you get your protein from, and then two, like how are you using supplements or how are you recovering so quickly from day to day?
Yeah, recovery is partially from is reducing inflammation in your body. So a plant-based diet is a very, very anti-inflammatory diet. So you're not going to be eating things that are causing additional inflammation so that your body can focus on healing at the muscles. Number two, the protein. I actually get 100 grams of protein a day, and as an athlete, you need around 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of protein for your body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some guidelines for strength athletes as well, but I don't know those off the top of my head.
Right.
But without even focusing on protein, that's how much protein. Like, I've done a macronutrient analysis for 2 weeks just to kind of get an idea of what I'm eating. And yeah, like, I don't have any problems with lack of protein for recovery, and I don't typically even use protein powders. I just eat like grains are really high in protein. Quinoa, brown rice, vegetables are actually per percentage of calories. Like, it's hard to eat, 1,000 calories in vegetables, but the percentage of protein in a vegetable is actually quite high.
Okay.
So getting, like, broccoli has protein, spinach has protein, especially like green items, and I eat a lot of beans and bean products, and those are really high in protein and other different key nutrients that help with recovery.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I eat oatmeal, and with like hemp hearts, I add nutritional yeast to my food. Yeah, I don't know. I just have never had an issue with protein deficiency or even iron deficiency in my diet. Like, as long as you're eating a whole foods diet and not eating like processed crap, then you're going to be fine with protein intake.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the arguments you see maybe against the plant-based diet would be like getting the full amino acid profile. But then again, if you're having your blood panels checked and you're healthy. That's really the name of the game, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of amino acid profile, I can't remember the exact information, but I on my podcast, I interviewed Brenda Davis, and she's a world-class plant-based nutritionist. And I actually asked her specifically about amino acids in a plant-based diet. But the thing that she said is like the idea of like a complete protein is kind of a myth. But you do have to be eating a variety of plants. You can't just eat the same exact thing every day, or you will become deficient. So as long as you're eating a variety in your diet, you're not going to have any issues with amino acids.
Do you supplement at all?
I take a multivitamin. I take vitamin D regularly because I live in a cloudy place.
Mm-hmm.
The multivitamin is kind of just a fail-safe check. And for plant-based diet, there are two things that you actually should pay attention to, and that's vitamin B12 because you don't get a large amount naturally from your food. But I do eat a lot of nutritional yeast, which is high in B12. So all of my tests, I've actually been way above average with B12 in my diet. And the other thing is iodine, and this is something for a lot of people to consider. People that don't eat table salt, if you're just having sea salt in your diet and you're not eating processed foods, you need to have iodine. I don't know how much iodine is in meat products, but if you're eating a plant-based diet, eating like iodized salt, or you could get sea vegetables are high in iodine. So those are the two things that I kind of just keep an eye on, and my vitamin D.
Yeah, for like the electrolytes you're talking about.
No, just vitamin D for energy
salt.
And
the salt.
Oh, the salt. Yeah. The salt is for iodine levels in your body. Like you need to have you'll have thyroid issues if you don't have enough iodine in your diet. So just making sure that if you eat a plant-based diet and you're eating just sea salt, there won't be much iodine in your diet. So you have to add in like sea vegetables.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I was going to recommend bone broth, but I feel like that's out the door. So another thing that people that listen to the show always hit us up on when we try to bring in people from a lot of different sports, and then they hear about it and they kind of want to, like, sometimes it motivates people to want to take these sports up. Is there any gear that you recommend? Like, is there any like gear that you're like kind of like have to have type gear, like a certain kind of camelback or just anything like that?
Like for if you want to become a mountain biker?
Yeah, for sure. Like gear that you rely on to like get you through these races.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend padded shorts because a lot of times when people start mountain biking, they just go in their running shorts or their gym shorts or whatever, and you got to save the taint.
Yeah.
So definitely some nice shorts. Just make sure you're comfortable on your bike. Like that's the most important thing. But in terms of gear on the bike, I love full suspension mountain bikes because it's fun. And tubeless tires. If you have tubes in your tires, you have to run much higher tire pressure. And that's really going to affect the way that you ride your bike because it's like a basketball. If you put tons of air in a basketball, it's going to bounce off everything. And that's what your tire is going to do. It's not going to give you good traction on the dirt. You're going to bounce off rocks and roots. So if you have tubeless tires and a sealant, kind of like a car tire, and you can run less tire pressure, you're actually going to mold over rocks and roots, and you're going to get better traction in the dirt as well. So it makes it way more fun, and you don't have to change flat tires. So that's awesome.
Yeah, damn, okay. Yeah, I want to stress the importance of what you just said because last weekend I did like a 260-mile bike ride, and I don't ride a lot. And the two things that I found myself contending with...
Was that in one day? Or like for the weekend? Or that's a lot of miles.
Yeah, I rode 130 miles down, and then I like slept in a hammock on the beach, and then I rode back.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
where was this?
I live in Virginia Beach, and so I rode to like Rodanthe, like right under Rodanthe, North Carolina, like Outer Banks. So it was pretty cool. It was flat, but it was like ocean on one side and fields on the other. And I just had like Joe Rogan in my ears for 6 hours. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a long time to be on a bike.
It was. I loved it though. I'm gonna like start doing it a lot. But the two things that I found myself contending with were flat tires and taint pain. So I want to just say that what you just recommended could not be any more endorsed by Lionheart Radio. Perfect. So the Lionheart Kicker is the final question, and we try to ask everybody this. And it can be based on competing, or it can be just life advice. But if you had a platform for the day and you could give advice and it were guaranteed that everybody in the world would hear it and it would be translated to every language, what would you tell people?
Two things. Number one is have a sense of humor in your life. because if you take yourself too seriously and what you're doing too seriously, it's not going to be much fun. And number two is do your best to be empathetic, because if you can try to understand where other people are coming from, it really makes the world a more tolerant and better place. Like if somebody is rude to you, it's not about you. Like maybe they just had something really bad just happen to them and they just lashed out and they didn't mean to. So I think empathy is one of the keys to self-awareness and really understanding your fellow human. It makes you less affected by when somebody might lash out at you, and it also affects the way that you treat other people.
How do you foster empathy, though? Because maybe you just were born with it, right?
I don't necessarily think you're born with empathy. I think that you just try, and it's a mindset. It's like whenever you're speaking with somebody, try to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they might be coming from. And it requires like putting your ego aside and putting like your agenda aside, but really trying to understand that. You'll never fully understand other people, but as long as you make that effort, and you just keep practicing it, and it makes you more tolerant of other things going on, and it helps you be more flexible. It helps you have that sense of humor. It helps you be willing to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, for sure. There you go. Laugh a little bit. Don't be such a dick. Sonya Looney.
Yeah, that's right. That's my next t-shirt.
All right. Thanks for being on today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much.
All right. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke white Escalade on cinches for you dipshit, so you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland